Today on Will Bake for Food, I'm going to show you how to make this citrus dream bundt cake.
Only food for me. Food, food, food.
Welcome back to Will Bake for Food. If you saw my last video where I made some New York style bagels, I had this product called non-diastatic malt powder. Well, in the package that was sent to me, I got a recipe for a lemon bliss cake from King Arthur Flour. So I thought, I really like lemon and it's a bundt cake, so I thought, why not give it a shot? We're gonna put our Will Bake for Food twist on a lemon bundt cake. You can find a full list of instructions and the full set of ingredients on my Will Bake for Food blog. Now, let's get started. The first thing that we have to do in this lemon bundt cake is to preheat our oven to 350 degrees, and I have this bundt pan that I got from my mom, I think. I've liberally greased it with a product called Baker's Joy, and you really have to because this cake will stick real easily. The next thing that we need to do is cream our butter and our sugar together. So I have 2 sticks of butter, and I'm just gonna break those up ever so slightly. Now I have 2 cups of granulated sugar that I'm just gonna put in here. And this part seems like it doesn't really take a long time, but you should really cream your butter and your sugar together for 4 to 5 minutes. I usually do it about 3 because my butter is pretty soft. I let it sit out for at least 2 hours. So about 3 minutes, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's creamed. Okay, so while our butter is finishing creaming here, we can go ahead and get our dry ingredients together. I've got 3 cups of all-purpose flour and 2 teaspoons of baking powder that I'm gonna put in here. Not baking soda, baking powder. And then I use salted butter almost exclusively, so then I'm gonna use a half a teaspoon of salt. If you're using unsalted butter, go ahead and use a whole teaspoon of salt, and that will balance out your salt. Whisk this together, and then you can set it aside until this is done. So it's been 3 minutes, and I want to show you what this butter looks like. Look how fluffy this is, and it's because we whipped all that air in there and dissolved some of the sugar into the butter, and that's part of what makes this pound cake just so delicious. We're going to incorporate our eggs one at a time, and that's just pretty much so we can break them up and start to build our mixture together. Okay, so just one at a time, and whoop, there we go. Now remember to do that. Now after I got my last egg, I'm going to go ahead and scrape down the sides here so that I ensure that all that butter gets mixed into the egg mixture, and go underneath down below too. Okay, and then whisk it a little bit longer. Not whisk it, but beat it. What I usually like to do with my dry mixture is I like to do a third and then half the milk, a third, half the milk, a third. So you start with dry, milk in the middle, end with dry. Kind of makes sense. And when you see it in the batter, it makes a lot more sense than it kind of sounds. It's like, what? What's going on here? Anyway, we're gonna put about a third of this in here with the power off because I tried to do that one time and it took my spoon and it was just really bad. So about a third, and then mix it in on slow so that it absorbs the flour. My second third is going in. Rest of the milk. And we only have one more ingredient that goes into this mixture before it goes into the pan, and that's the zest of 2 medium to large lemons. And you need about that size lemon because that's how much juice you need for the next step in the cake. So we're gonna put the zest in here and just give it a little whiz so it stirs around. See how nice and creamy that is? That's because of that butter. Now, in my bundt pan, this is kind of tricky, not gonna lie, but we want to go all the way around in the middle as much as possible, just so that we don't have to clean off the sides so much. Okay, do your best. Then you can rotate your pan. So I've got my batter in my pan, and if you want to, you can wipe around the sides and the edges just to make sure that it's, you know, not crazy up the sides and there's not parts that will burn while it's in the oven. Shake your pan just a little bit. This is not as delicate as an angel food cake. It's a pound cake. Pound. right? Knock a little bit of air out. Just kind of smooth it around like that. It goes into our 350-degree oven. I'm gonna say for this one, 25 and turn. It needs to go for about 50 to 55 minutes. So 25, rotate the pan, 25 more. 55, 57 minutes is what I went. And the way you tell if a pound cake is done is if you push on it and it springs back and there's nothing in there. Or you can take a tester and stick that in and it comes out completely clean. Just test it in a couple, 3 different spots. I'm testing like between the flute and the edge. Okay, now the interesting thing about this cake is it needs to cool in the pan for about 5 minutes, but upside down so that it releases from the pan. Okay, so I'm gonna take a cooling rack here and just flip it over, okay, and then let it cool on the pan for about 5 minutes. Meanwhile, what I'm gonna do is make a simple syrup made with those 2 lemons, about 1/3 cup of lemon juice, and 3/4 cup of sugar. Dissolve that together, and then I'll show you what to do next. So, we've been cooling for about 5 minutes in the pan, and this is the scary part because we wanna know if it sticks or not, and hopefully it don't stick. Fingers crossed. So I'm gonna just remove this hot pan here off the cake. Yay! It did not stick, which is really good. So the next step is to baste this basically with some simple syrup that's made from the lemon juice and some sugar. I put a piece of wax paper underneath my cooling rack here, and you don't necessarily have to do this, but if you want to get much more of this flavor down in there, just poke some like tiny prick holes in here all the way around, and this simple syrup, when you baste it, will go straight down into here, and it will be delicious. Once you've gotten all your simple syrup on your cake, you can let your cake cool completely before the next step, and that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so now it's time to plate our lemon pound cake, and we call it our citrus dream cake because we have one more thing that goes on top of it that is a dream. So anyway, so what I'm gonna do is I have my plate here, and notice on my plate I have some high sides here. You want that because we're gonna put a frosting on top of that just to, and the high sides will catch everything, okay? So I'm gonna take my, fingers crossed this works, it has in the past, and just kind of slide this right there. Woo! And you can hear when I did that little bit of crunch that's on the outside, and that's from that glaze that we put on. Okay, so I have 1.5 cups of confectioner sugar that I've just, got sifted and ready to go. And then the liquid that we're gonna put in this is actually vanilla and lemon juice that we've freshly squeezed from those lemons from earlier. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and put the vanilla in. That's 1.5 teaspoons, and start to mix it up. And once this starts to come together, it will be a delicious thing. Now, the next thing to put in this that I found a recipe for, and it's really great, is you put 2 tablespoons of melted butter in this. It is like heaven on earth. It is truly a dream. I don't know what happens to the butter, but it is just amazing, and it helps the frosting actually set up a little bit on top of your cake. Okay, so right now this looks pretty lumpy, and it's okay that it looks lumpy because what we're gonna do is thin it out basically. And you could do this with water if you wanted to, if you don't have, the extra lemon juice or whatever, but I had plenty of extra lemon juice. So 1 tablespoon or 2 at a time here, just to thin it out and get a nice glaze. Okay, so we've got a consistency that it's a little runny, but it's okay, because that butter, once it starts to set up after it cools down, will definitely keep this from running everywhere. Okay, so here's the next step. Just ever so slightly put this over top of your cake and just let it drizzle there, just evenly around as much as you can. If you wanted this to be like completely white, then you would have to use imitation vanilla that is not, made out of pure vanilla extract, right? Because otherwise it would be like it's got a little bit of a color to it because vanilla is brown, right? So now, this will even out a little bit, but if you want to, you can just kind of do that to encourage it to run down the sides ever so slightly. And there you go. I like it a little thicker rather than thin, because if it's thin, it'll just run right off. Okay? There you go. See, you just push it a little bit there. It will encourage it to start to run down the sides. What we call our citrus dream. Thank you so much for watching We'll Bake for Food.
Only food